Well, thank you all for being here. What I'm about to tell you hasn't been something that I've disclosed until recently in the help of Dr. Greer, among other people, so I appreciate your help with this. In 2009, my unit, which was most degraded infantry battalion in the entire Marine Corps, which was 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, was called in to do humanitarian assistance operations out in the Philippines, which was Operation Quetzana, which we were attached to the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, which conducts maritime operations all throughout Southeast Asia, in conjunction with the 7th Naval Fleet, which houses one landing helo deck, or LHD, among LPDs, which is what I was on, called a USS Denver. Ironically, that's where I'm from, so kind of felt like home. Now, during that operation in Quetzana in the Philippines, they had actually heard that a tsunami and earthquake hit the western part of Sumatra, which is western Indonesia, Padang City more specifically. Out of all the ships in the 7th Fleet, the ship I was on was the only one that was routed to that location, which was oddly strange, but then again, this is my first humanitarian operation, so I don't know the logistics of it, but the skipper of the ship would probably know that information. So this happened September 30th. We ended up getting called and dropped anchor around October 8th. We are briefed in the ward room, which is the officers' mess, where they eat like their cafeteria per se. We're briefed that there is some of President Obama's family members that are present on either in the city or somewhere near there. They had a SEAL platoon that was ready to go to retrieve those people. Us knowing well that Indonesia is also the second largest terrorist capital where they train these guys, and they'll send them up to whatever theater of operation where anybody wants a piece of the United States, they ship them up to go handle it. So we know that well, and we were then briefed that we were going to be armed during this operation, just to also provide security for the transportation coming to basically drop off medical supplies, sheltering items, food, purified water, things like that. So they ended up selecting certain Marines to go ahead and do this. We were only in sticks of six Marines, so it had NCOs on top of other Marines to help with that. So we again boarded CH-53 Super Stallions, which are gigantic helicopters that are roughly 100 feet long. I love the design of them. It's my personal favorite. But we ended up boarding this on the ship, and we flew to the southwestern part of the city, which is Padang. Looked a lot different through satellite imagery that I've recently seen. Back then is a lot different, especially because most of it was decimated, on fire, rubble, flooded, you name it, basically the worst kind of scenario you could ever see. From then, once we touched down on this landing strip, it took probably about 2 minutes. And then again, the pilots got radio confirmation to go ahead and drop us into certain parts. So we again dropped to a hasty LZ, which took probably about 6-7 minutes to fly to from that position. And we dropped to a hasty LZ. We got off the bird, and what we were instructed to do at that point through the briefing was to push to a high ground at least to get better observation. As a Marine, the tactical advantage that you get from having a observation from a top point is you see everything clearly. You could also coordinate from there. At that time, we had did a tactical column, which we were able to get eyes on pretty much everything, especially with 6 Marines, so we have the effective communication at that point. If we need to engage, we can properly do it within the amount of ammunition we've got, as well as the weapons that we got, which were only M16A4s. So at that point, we decided to push forward. We trekked up about 300 meters. At this time, I have a Panasonic camera that has the ability to take photographs. It has a ability to take videos, obviously. When we got to this high point, I was taking video camera, and I had actually turned to the north, which just kind of slopes down. And right there was something that stuck out like a sore thumb, especially with jungle terrain, things like that. Vegetation, very green stuff, was something that stuck out so well. It's always going to be basically imprisoned in my mind for the rest of my life, and it has been for 14 years, was something that was rotating, and it was transitioning between colors like a light matte gray as well as a dark matte black. So in between, that's what it kept, and it was very smooth. We had all looked at each other as we got online, and we decided to investigate. The further thing I want to say is that I actually took pictures and video of this before we actually trucked down. We had a dump pouch where we basically, if we expend ammunition, we want to retain our magazines, so we put those there. So I dropped my camera in there. and we decided to go down. We didn't have any communications, which was weird, and that was a very odd thing, and it's something that either could have been good that we didn't, or it could have been something that could have been very bad. And it just however you want to look at that. Once we got down this slope, we were approximately 150 meters away from this craft. When we all got to the point where we could see it, just like behind here, again, Mr. Schratt, phenomenal job. You can see that the craft here actually was roughly about 300 feet. And the reason why I know this is because you could fit 3 of the helicopters that we flew in on underneath this craft. It was rotating in a clockwise motion. The panels here that you see, the black ones, at least 3 of them, was like a Vanta black, very dark. I have no idea what that was. On the very top, there was like a pyramid structure that you could see the shadowing of it, which would elicit that was a pyramid structure. And it had an audible hum to it, kind of like a guitar amp if you were to unplug that, or like a transformer. It's very audible. If I was to hear that sound again, I could tell you, okay, it's probably this thing or something similar to that. It's very distinct. And the way that it was floating, which was about 10, 15, 20 feet off the ground, it was kind of a very eerie thing to see because I've never seen anything like that in my life. When we got up to that point, we were then intercepted by a team of soldiers or rogue military force, if you will. The most concerning thing about this is they all had American dialects. They had American gear. They had OTVs, black. They had black camouflage. They had very similar setups to what we have, but more high speed, something what you would see special operation groups these days have. They had no insignias on. They had no ranks. They had nothing that would signify who they were. They had black ball caps. They had M4A4s that were equipped with ACOGs, which was a step up from what we were currently issued, as well as PEC-16 IR illumination devices that you use for night vision and night patrols, things like that. So we were engaged. We had 8 of them put the drop on us. You could audibly hear them blow the safety selectors off. They basically started screaming at us, telling us what we were doing, we were not allowed to be there, who were we with, what were we doing there, threatened that they could kill us right then and there. We could get lost in the jungle. They could throw us out of a helicopter if they needed to. It was very nerve-wracking at that point, especially looking to my fellow Marines and seeing the reactions on their faces too. We were all freaking scared, to say nonetheless. So with that being said, each Marine was then patted down along with myself. We had our weapons taken from us. They were basically cleared in condition 4, which means they had no round chamber, no magazine in. They dumped our magazines out of our mag pouches as well onto the deck. And then again, because of Marine Corps order,